Hello and welcome to video number 3, and this is 8 different styles of infographics. And the goal of this particular video is to show you different angles that you can take that you can apply to your infographics. So hopefully by the end of this particular video, you have a good idea of which style you want to use for your own infographic. Now, you might be thinking, oh, I want to do this, that, and the other. Really, I want you to just think of one infographic that you could apply. And I'm going to show you different infographics that can be used for different traffic sources and how they appeal to different audiences so that you can pick the right one. So the first style is called the graphic content. So this is pretty simple, but it's an illustration version of a blog post or article. And this is perfect for informative infographics. You can basically turn lengthy articles with lots of content into an appealing illustration. So, like I said earlier, a picture is worth 1,000 words, or even in this case, it could be worth 10, 20, 30, 40 words. So what you want to do is you could have the article written out, and you want to look at the article, and you want to see how you can replace certain paragraphs possibly with different graphical content, icons, cartoons, real life images. But like I said in the previous video, make sure that you are consistent with your graphics. Now, in this case, you definitely want to add attention. You want to have a grabbing headline that grabs people in. You want to build upon that, add to your storyline, add to your content, and pull people in further and further and further. So essentially, you want to add a short but powerful description about your topic. And this works really, really well on social media because, as you know, with social media, everyone does not have a long attention span. You know, people are looking at different things on social media, so you need to be able to grab them right away and then pull them in. And if you look at a lot of different infographics that are on social media sites and that do well on social media sites, you'll notice a pattern, and that pattern is graphical content. That is big on social networking sites such as LinkedIn. So if you think about your audience, you want to think about images that would actually relate to them, to your niche, to your target market, and would emotionally some way relate to them. Because everyone's not really going to be motivated purely by your statistics. They're going to be motivated by your graphics that invoked emotion. Because as you know, most people buy because of emotion. They do not buy initially because of a logic. Emotion starts first, and then logic justifies that desire to buy the product. Second style is a flowchart. So in this case, you can use a lot of processes, flows, and you can also use it as a fun and creative way to answer a specific question. So if you think about a flowchart, we always have a starting point. You have a starting point, you go to somewhere, you can have yes or no. If it's yes, they moved here. If they no, they move to a different process and different avenue and different pathway. So a flowchart is really good at expressing sometimes complicated questions where there is an if or else kind of avenue. So if you do this, then it might take you to this pathway here. If you say no, then it'll take you to this pathway here. So this is great. So what you can do to create a flowchart type infographic style is to create a series of questions that would lead to one particular answer. So as you know, your end goal is to lead them to one particular answer. But when somebody views a flowchart, they don't really know that is your end goal. So if you can some way direct them to your end goal, whether that be subscribe to your list, buy your product or service, then you will successfully have completed that goal. But you always have to start writing out the questions first before you actually implement the graphics. So like I said, if you start with the graphics first, you're not going to be able to create a compelling story. So write it out first and then graph it out second. Now, this also works really well on social networking sites as well. Number 3 is the timeline. History need not be boring. You really can make it fun and creative by using infographics. So if your infographic requires a timeline, your content has a cumulative step-by-step timeline or step-by-step process, then this might be the style for you. So here's an example. It doesn't necessarily have to relate to history, but it can relate to a step-by-step process as well. But as you can see in this example shows the whole timeline that it takes to launch maybe a product. So from the concept, the idea, to structuring it, to filling in creative ideas, to developing it, to testing, to make sure that it works, and to do a full launch. So this essentially could be applied to even the creation of an infographic. Before you can even launch the infographic, or before you can test it or develop it or have creative graphics or wireframe it, it all starts with a concept or idea, right? So the concept starts here, then we can build upon it. So obviously with an infographic, you need to write it out. Questions, story plots, whatever that might be. And then you wireframe it so you can figure out, okay, what do these questions go in order? Do they need to go in order? Is it a step-by-step process? Create the structure. Then add the graphics elements. So you can't add the graphic elements first, as you can see here. So this is a great way to make it creative and fun. And this works well to present a series of events, a sequential step-by-step process, cycles, a journey, and the likes. The fourth one is reference. Your old, reliable, and usable handy guide. With a reference, you can break down a process, for example, 7 steps or 7 guides to choosing the theme for your infographic, or 10 steps to creating a maybe flowchart infographic. So it breaks down a very complex process. So another example of this is maybe the dummies book. So if you see the dummies, something for dummies, scrapbooking for dummies, internet marketing for dummies, WordPress for dummies, haircutting for dummies, whatever that might be for dummies. But it breaks it down into a simplistic process. So what is complex in your niche, in your target market? What are things that people have problems in your target market? This could be your infographics. So how can you take that and break it down to something more simplistic? So another example, what to do when an earthquake strikes. So what do? Like, what do you do? Survival guide, bug out bags. What do you do? What do you do immediately? What do you do afterwards? Kind of thing. Cheat sheets are another good thing. So, for example, KitchenAid for your baking needs, your guide to color emotion wheel, things like swipe files, templates, things that are easy and take something complex and make it easier. Usable charts. Example, the metrics conversion chart. Number 5 is compare and contrast. Highlight the pros and cons by comparing and contrasting one versus the other. This is really, really good, especially when you have A and B, enemy, hero, something versus something, fact versus fiction, myth versus truth. This is really good in that sense, because if you look at a lot of things outside, if you add controversy of some sort, compare and contrast, dog or cat lovers, then what happens is you bring in people from both sides of the coin. And it really thought provokes people. It really, really gets them that point where they really think. They're either on side A or side B. So you can compare the contrast. This is really good for controversy, getting viral marketing, viral shares to your infographic. Number 6 is reports and number crunching. For tons of data, charts, graphics, numbers, a statistical type of infographic really works well. So when somebody looks at tons of numbers, it gets overwhelming. So how do you take those numbers and turn them into a chart so that it is easy for people to understand? So pie charts, line graphs, things that would appeal to your audience, but would make things a lot easier for them to understand. Now, if you do use a strategy, I would recommend that you make sure to use just one color scheme for all of your graphs and charts. Because like I said, you don't want to distract them by utilizing too many colors, too many fonts, too many different things. Keep it simple, use one theme, one color, or a few colors, or max 4 colors, and go with that. Number 7 is photo infographics. So kind of going back to what I said earlier, you kind of want to choose cartoons only or realistic photo only and stick with that. So this kind of infographic uses just one main image with a little bit of content, and the image would tell the story. So you don't need to have a ton of images, just a few that would really tell the story. And then of course, number 8, make your own style, test it out, see what works. So designing your own infographic has endless possibilities. You could even take 1 through 7 and combine a few and mix and match and see how the combination affects your infographic. You could split test it, you could see what works, and then what works with your audience, stick with that. Don't go all out and pick other different types. Figure out what works, what doesn't work, and stick with what works. By developing your own styles and mixing and matching what works for you, you'll be able to figure out what works for your audience. And like I said, different audiences are different, so find what works and stick with it. That's it. Let's move on to video number 4 and talk about strategies to build curiosity, making infographics thought-provoking.